Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Nostalgia Trap. I am your host, David Parsons. I'm ready if you are. Let's do this. Today we're talking about Repo Man. I don't know what your history is with the film Repo Man that came out in 1984, directed by Alex Cox, starring Emilio Estevez, and of course the legendary Harry Dean Stanton. It's a film that I have a particular personal history with and has a particular cultural place. And we get into it today with a favorite Nostalgia Trap guest, Daniel Traber. We had Daniel Traber on a little while ago. I think it was episode 141. You can go back in time and listen to that if you want to. But it made sense to talk to Daniel Traber today because Repo Man is such an important part of 80s punk, and that's what we got into when last we talked to Daniel. So this was a really fun conversation. I feel like every time Daniel and I talk, we have this sort of tornado of ideas that we throw at each other. So I hope the sort of scattered nature of our ideas is an appealing listen for you. Because for me, I think that we produce a lot of compelling sort of angles throughout the sort of tornado of our conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. For me, the key idea, and it became the title of this episode, Liminality is Survival, is something I've been thinking a lot about since talking to Daniel the other day in the conversation you're about to listen to. Repo Man is such an awesome movie, and it's such a unique movie that sort of occupies that liminal space between popular culture and what we might describe as punk. So we get into that, and sort of like this. There's this concept of the indie, the sort of the independent media, or the indie sort of this sort of indie personality. I've been thinking about that a lot since this conversation because it relates to the indie media and what I'm doing with Nostalgia Trap. And now, I've always said, I consider this independent media, but what does that really mean? And I think it's part of why I ask for Patreon money and subscribers every time we do an episode, because independent means to me that I'm not connected to any particular institution. When I think about like corporations, of course, like there's that part of it, but there's also like this sort of social world connected to media that I am completely an outcast of. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. I mean, I would say part of it is like you got to go to the right schools and stuff like that. And you can get very bitter thinking about sort of the outside and inside culture of American media and even left media. But for me, like it's even a deeper thing, and it comes out in this conversation with Daniel about Repo Man, which is sort of this idea that I've gathered a lot of people who listen to Nostalgia Trap over the years. We've been on the air podcasting since 2014. I have a large enough audience that I could sell it. And what I mean by that is I could be be selling like stamps.com to you right now. And all of a sudden Nostalgia Trap could be the kind of podcast that has advertising on it. And I think about that stuff, and this is going to sound very Gen X. This is going to sound very like old punk kind of thing. But like for me, that just like totally ruins it. It totally severs the connection. It makes me sad. And why that is like, it's like means that Nostalgia Trap would just be part of the rest of the shitty world that sells you stuff. And I know that like influencer culture and everyone's a product now, and there's that kind of element of it. But Patreon just is, it's not even that I want to be on Patreon. It's that Patreon gives me an opportunity to sort of get paid for the work I'm doing and go directly to the people that want to consume the product I'm making. So, and without sort of thinking that I'm sort of giving them a line. Like Joe Rogan, is a huge douchebag, obviously. And he got $100 million to go to Spotify. So fuck him. But, before that, no matter what you think about all the fucking asshole right-wing guests he has all the time, there was a sense that the connection to his audience was a really important one. And that connection was because Joe was, they had the sense that people had the sense that he was sort of unconnected to any particular, puppet master, be it corporate or whatever. So, that's important to people. And I feel like that's important part of Nostalgia Trap. And that's all a way of saying that I really appreciated this conversation about Repo Man and punk, and the conversations we've been having with Danny Bessner, and the editors of the Drift magazine, who are going to be on the episode that comes out next week. And they're sort of, on the same kind of line of like, how do we create left media that's sort of unconnected to the social circles and the corporate circles and the same sort of people and attitudes that we hear. In other words, how can we sort of create a new left? And I don't know if that's what this project is about. But I certainly feel like I need to remain independent. And so that's all to say. If you want to subscribe to the show, go to patreon.com/nostalgiatrap. We have lots of bonus episodes, lots of stuff on culture lately, movies, TV shows. If you're into that stuff, that's what you get for supporting the show. And to me, that's an exchange that's really important for us. So patreon.com/nostalgiatrap really keeps us going. And if you've been listening to the show for a while and you're not a subscriber, I think you'd really enjoy our bonus episodes. So thanks so much for the people that are doing that and making all of this possible. Okay, let's get to this Repo Man conversation. Here is me and the always brilliant Daniel Traber. All right. Daniel Traber, I was just going back and listening to your Nostalgia Trap episode from a little bit ago, episode 141, for those that want to go back in the archives. It's on Spotify and a number of other platforms. It's good to talk to you again, Daniel. Nice to see you.
It's so good to talk to you. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, we have been talking about Repo Man behind the scenes here. So I feel like there are many things that you and I could talk about. And in fact, last time we talked about punk.
What didn't we talk about?
We talked about punk there's a lot, but I think one of the through lines that I think we might pick up here is like punk as a sort of malleable, or like counterculture as a sort of malleable set of iconography, that could be, left or right. And that's something that we've tried to come to terms with a lot.
Well, that's definitely something Alex Cox wants to play with. And that's probably the way I have a few, like I told you, I have some house cleaning from that last episode. So one, my father was on a sabbatical. That's how we ended up in Vienna, Austria for that year when I first learned about anarchy and all that.
Right, yeah.
That was the word, sabbatical. And then I told you the anecdote when I went to my mom and I said, and this is the real one, the correct one was, Mom, what do you think of anarchy? And she says, I think it's fine as long as I'm in charge. And like, I'm thinking
that is so beautiful.
Lillian Traber was a wise woman.
Like anarchy is okay with me as long as I'm in charge.
As long as I'm the boss. The third thing, and this is something that's always bugged me a bit. No, actually, there's other two. The smoking, because I brought up the smoking and decline of Western civilization, and I had a real point, and then you and I went on this nostalgia trip about how much we used to love, how much we still sort of love it, but had to quit. And the whole point of that was when in Decline of Western Civ, when they kept showing all that montage of all the punk rockers smoking cigarettes, like rebellion, ooh. And I wanted to use that notion of the contextual nature of rebellion, which is like your parents think it's rebellion. Philip Morris just thinks you're another corporate tool, So from this perspective, rebellion, from the other one, sucker.
Right.
And then the last thing, all the stuff we had to say about punk rock, and this will be important. We can get into Repo Man with this. We didn't ever say, we're like, politics. The thing we didn't talk about was the music.
Yeah.
The music.
Right.
And even though in my narrative of that, I was looking for a new politics, but man, Nevermind the Bollocks is my first true, willfully, consciously bought punk album. And I knew it had a politics the second I turned it on. And then when the music started, I was like, yes, I have found the music I've been looking for. Instantly, I just like that instantaneous feel like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for, And so just wanted to make sure we don't forget. The music's awesome too, kids.
Yeah.
But not that faction punk Sirius XM channel. God, I've tried.
Oh, it's weird. Man. It's weird to go on like Spotify punk lists and things like that. And it's all Green Day and stuff like that. And it's
Marky Mark's Sirius channel is fine. It is good.
That's crazy. I didn't expect you to say Marky Mark's Sirius channel. Go check it out. Yeah, so Repo Man, I watched it last night. I've seen it a million times. It's definitely a film that didn't feel like my generation film. It came out in 1984, and there's a long story to the production of this film and why it's such a unique thing. Like Alex Cox somehow stumbled into Universal, giving him a lot of money or more money than he should have had to create this thing.
Don't forget who the producer is on that movie.
Go ahead,
Michael Nesmith. Guitar player for the Monkees.
There you go.
And Michael Nesmith had come into his...
That makes sense. That's why Amy Dolenz is in the film, right? Like Amy Dolenz is Mickey Dolenz' daughter. And wasn't
is she the girlfriend?
Yeah.
She's beautiful. Yeah,
she's Layla
woman.
in the film. Right.
Okay. Well, the funny thing, because Michael Nesmith had come into he had inherited, I think his family had come into had invested in or invented whiteout. Remember that when we all used actual typewriters?
Yeah.
Or you sniffed it. I don't know. I heard
whiteout and Post-it notes were the entrepreneurial heroes of the 80s.
Yeah. Well, he inherited all this whiteout money, and my theory, like I write in my book chapter on this, my theory is that he's looking for some subcultural capital because he's the one who quit the Monkees because he wanted to be an authentic musician.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that informs the entire film. But
when did you start with Repo Man? Is it
let's
a film
do the nostalgia part. I'd like to hear your story as well, actually.
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I didn't watch this movie growing up at all, and in fact, I always kind of was jealous of the people that were the Repo Man people. That seemed like they were huge fans of the film. They traded. They traded the lines. I feel like it was sort of a Lebowski for a certain generation, right? Of like punk kids.
There's so many instant phrases and catchphrases in this movie.
Oh my God. We won't even get started on them. We'll get to them. But like, I'm actually kind of glad that I didn't watch it until I was a little bit older, because when I finally watched it, and I honestly finally watched it in my 30s, I got all of it. I felt like I understood exactly what I was tuned in exactly to what Alex Cox was doing. I thought the tone of it was so like, and the tone of it and the sort of balancing act that is this film, in which it's like truly a punk film. At the same time, it's 100% a Hollywood production that is satirizing punk. The fact that it exists as all those things at once. I know you get into that stuff, Daniel, because your work. Don't forget
our safety word. Postmodern.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Postmodernism is the word.
You and I could make a drinking game out of how many times we say pomo and postmodern.
Yeah, and I think that's because of the academy that we were trained in to sort of understand it as this sort of pastiche coming together. But what about your history with Repo Man? Because like I said, I came at it like I already got it. I kind of came at it from an older, almost academic perspective, but it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
I was able to come at it pure, so I didn't understand anything about postmodernism. So to give everybody sort of the quickie Wikipedia version of this, so it does come out in 84, March 84, so you have to always imagine it was being filmed in 83
right.
itself. There was a big change up at the studio, a big switch up. And of course, when a new head comes into a studio, they always want to get rid of the previous approved green lighted films and things. So they don't want themselves besmirched with them. They put it out anyway, the story goes. And I got this from Wikipedia. This is the first time I had heard this story, because the LP, Dr. Traber has all his archive materials.
Oh, you've got the vinyl, dude.
Vinyl.
Well,
look at that.
Daniel
Look how big it is. You can see everything.
The Repo Man soundtrack vinyl. And the soundtrack we can get into is, a legendary element of it. But
I don't know if this is true or apocryphal, but the story I read on Wikipedia was that they were going to dump it, not release it, but the soundtrack was selling so well, they figured there'd be an audience for the movie itself.
Right.
So they did a very limited release, didn't do well. It has a second life in the video shop, the VHS video store. So that's how I come to it. It would have been winter 85. I was at this boarding school in Tennessee, and on weekends, they would go out and just rent movies. Nobody would vote for them or anything. One time, some kid comes up and is like, Traber, you got to go see this movie. It's got punks in it. I'm like, I don't know why, but whoever picked this movie off the shelf by whatever accident or actual knowledge, thank you. And so I watch it. All I cared about was the punk element. The punks were in it. But as it's going along, I'm picking up on the humor, the satire for sure, but I didn't have the word postmodernism. I'm like 17, I'm a junior in high school. So that is my introduction.
What's exhilarating about it for a punk kid to see it? Because one of the things that is kind of funny about Repo Man is how little punk, like, there's no punk concert. It doesn't have like a sort of like punk music thread besides the music in the background. At the beginning, you sort of see like house parties and things like that.
Slamming and
but there's not much. So what was it, the punk? Because when I think of Repo Man, and here's my other perspective coming from watching it as an older dude, I was like, this movie sort of is, it's got the punk music, but it really is almost like it just is punk in its sort of like ethos and what it's sort of, in other words, it's sarcasm. I almost feel like Harry Dean Stanton's character is punk somehow in sort of how he
had that aura,
right?
Of this like outsider actor,
right?
Right.
And so like
real actor.
This sort of intersection between the young punk and then this sort of like jaded old dude from another generation. I feel like that's a key to the film, right?
And I want to make sure we give Emilio Estevez props. I think he does a great job. And this is post all I think I don't know his full catalog, but before this, he done Francis Ford Coppola's Outsiders,
right?
Version of Outsiders, which was all just like, the new young hunks getting hired. But before that, I think he had done an ABC home after school special about the son who's getting high and surly, and so dad takes him on a fishing trip to straighten him out. And so, and don't forget, what's he going to do after this? Breakfast Club.
That's right.
But he's good in Breakfast Club too, damn it. I actually
love The Outsiders. I think that's one of Coppola's best movies. I know people like shit on that movie, but it's got Tom Cruise in it. It's got everybody's in that movie. Yep.
Patrick Swayze.
That's right.
Old man.
Yeah. Tom Cruise is super young in that movie too.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But the Greasers and the Socias.
Yeah. So did you feel as a young person that, because we talked about this in your last episode, you were into punk. You were the 80s punk scene was what you identified with. So how did this movie felt like some sort of vindication to you, or how did it feel? I'm
going to say I'm pretty sure I probably wasn't thinking it through as deeply. Obviously, like now seeing it as actually a punk movie, like the way all the scenes are very short and kind of violent,
Yeah.
In the way they're cut. But the humor, definitely the subversive humor for sure, I picked up on, and so that could have been a punk element. And that would have probably been what I would call now my first cult movie or transgressive kind of film,
Yeah.
You feel the vibe when you're watching it.
Definitely.
The weirdness element that is totally infused in it, but probably not thinking about it much farther than that, just excited. Not hating it. Not like, say, if you ever saw like Return of the Living Dead, it has punks in it. It was a piece of junk, just the bad caricature of punk,
Right.
Like if you watch documentaries that have like clips of punks in Chips episodes, TV episodes, just so bad.
That's kind of funny. So, I'd never really thought about that. So there are punks in Chips episodes, of course, because there's famously hippies in Dragnet episodes, right? Where they're going after these like kind of like cartoonish acid heads.
Cartoon, yeah.
Right. Cartoonish punks at Chips makes sense as well.
And
seems
so
like LA is a big site of this stuff.
And that music, since it's definitely, there's a lot of bands in there, but mostly like hardcore, Black Flag, Suicidal Tendencies, good Lord, Circle Jerks, Fear.
Yeah.
That's like legit music,
Right.
But let's give a shout out to, where are they? Oh, doggone it. There's the Plugs. There's a lot of music from the Plugs in this movie, who are originally from El Paso, Texas, so...
They're kind of like a surf band, right? They've got like a surf sound.
I think they come with it. Well, I think mostly they're kind of a lot of instrumentals or certainly their thing. Yeah. 3-piece band, not so much. Well, maybe there's some surf in there, but I want to say sort of like a cooler version of Los Lobos, but in way fewer members,
Let's give all right. Let's give people an idea of what this movie is for those that don't know. What I'd like to do ideally is sort of give people an idea of why this film is important and why old dudes like us talk about Repo Man so much. One of the reasons is because it's a unique film, and it's a film that sort of, because of the conditions of Hollywood that produced it, and the filmmaker Alex Cox sort of, and as we explained, this sort of like magical thing that came together to produce an oddball movie. There's nothing quite like it. But in terms of just its general plot, I mean, it's about a young guy supposed to be like 20 years old.
18.
Okay.
Because it shows up on that computer.
That's
right. It says 21.
He's lying about his age.
18. Right?
So he's a kid, and it's played by Emilio Estevez, and he's sort of in the punk scene, just kind of rambling about, and the plot of the movie really takes off when an older guy in a suit in an old car approaches him on the street as he's walking the streets of LA, and there's a lot of walking and driving in the streets of LA. It's a very street level LA movie.
Well, we also have to talk about later about the setting, that it's LA, but it's not clear that it's LA for outsiders like us.
Right.
Know?
Right. Well, for me, it is the LA of the '80s, 100%. But so yeah, he shows up. An older guy shows up and yells at him from the car and says, "You want to help me out?" And he kind of gets drawn into the life of Repo Men, men and women too. These workers at a trailer that are essentially
helping hand
ragtag team, helping hand repossession, who are
such a like commentary on the lie of advertising and business,
Right. And so he's kind of drawn into this world, and he becomes essentially the partner of Harry Dean Stanton and the Repo Man. The other part of this that often it's so funny that it's a part of the plot, and yet it's something that almost gets forgotten, is that there's an alien plot in this movie, that there's a car in LA that has
64 Chevy Malibu.
There you go. That's being kind of passed around the Repo Men and various different owners. And what's in this is also being chased by the government. So it's a government conspiracy movie. It's an alien movie, but it's really kind of like I said, a street level punk movie. And when I say punk, I mean that in the widest possible way. It has a sort of engagement with capitalism, with reactionary fascism.
If there was just some way of finding out how much the motherfuckers owe and getting it, capitalism.
Right. I mean, one thing that I read about the movie that I thought stuck out, and I wonder how you'd respond to it, is that this whole idea, and we talked about it last time, with this sort of idea that punk or punk culture or new age, we're certainly seeing in the Trump era, it has a malleability. It could be right-wing fascist, it could be left-wingers that are into it, it could go a lot of different ways. And you really get that sense in this movie through the idea that, Otto, the main character played by Emilio Estevez, is sort of like seamlessly just drawn into this like insanely reactionary business that's really about like stealing people's property when they can't pay. And the fact that you see Otto, who's this guy that kind of like stands in opposition to whatever his parents are or whatever, but he really easily goes into the world of ugly, corrupt capitalism.
Yeah. And don't forget, this is where the English prof's going to come in. Because like we were talking about, how do I teach it? I teach it. Well, here's the thing. Let me just clarify, sort of get my bona fides out. I have watched this movie. I can't even count how many times. I have taught this movie in my intro to literature class, and I now use it now I'm in charge of the intro to film analysis, it's called, class. Which is important because that's like the first day. I'm like, it isn't film history, it's film analysis. So we're going to just go anywhere we want, or rather where I want. But in both of those, so for the lit class, after we've done fiction and we've done poetry and drama, I have a pop culture section so that they can see where what we've been doing with analysis can be applied to all this stuff that surrounds them. And I've always used this movie. And I also then use it in Intro to Film Analysis when we do our first full-length film. I start off with some clips of things, but then this is the first time we watch a full movie and we do a full analysis of it. Well, it's a limited analysis. It's one particular theme. And the thing I love about this movie, one of the things that makes it special, of course, is that it has that Monty Python and the Holy Grail quality about it, where you're always finding another weird little quirk or detail.
Yes.
And the thing about this movie why I think about it from an aesthetic standpoint predominantly, but attaching it into philosophy and politics as well, is for the students. I think it's just weird enough that it's going to be a little confusing, but it's not so weird that you're going to be turned off and like, well, like an Andy Warhol movie of watching a guy sleep for 8 hours.
That's grad school, not undergrads. Yeah,
no.
You got to build a bridge with undergrads.
And so I just come in, look, we're going to do the theme of rebellion. What does Alice Cox have to say about rebellion? We'll obviously talk about that. But the thing is, there are so many stylistic choices made in this movie that it's a great way to teach them, what does that mean? Why is that there? How is that working? And he's really thinking through. He may say he isn't. I am still a person who's willing. I am willing to grant intention. I'm willing to give authors the benefit of the doubt, for good or bad. But anyway, so the aesthetics are the thing that have always, or more recently, the last couple of years, since 1996 actually, are the thing that I always focus on. But so that's where the English prof. So I've forgotten now what your original question was.
I was thinking about the politics part of it, but we can. Okay. I think the politics and aesthetic go together really well. But yeah,
absolutely.
I was just thinking about the capitalism in the movie and sort of how. He sort of gets sucked into that world of Repo Men, which is a world that's about property and about taking property. Yeah.
Well, that was where the aesthetics point, why I made that long preface. When you watch it again, pay attention to the costume change. When he first meets Bud, we got to get my cars out of this bad area, right? And that might be, I don't think the article was that good, but it had a great title. The world is one bad area,
Right.
And so he's just come from his party, whatever. He's wearing his Suicidal Tendencies fan gear. That shirt is specifically a Suicidal Tendencies fan style shirt. The stints, what they do. And so from that, he goes home. They've spent the money, given it to the televangelist. So, okay, I guess I'll be a Repo Man. He starts off with like a cut-off sleeve flannel shirt that he's wearing in that scene. And progressively, you see him transform into a Repo Man gear, with the light blue generic label jacket. But of course, he begins in a light blue generic smock at the grocery store where he's working, he's a minimum wage life is waiting for this kid, so capitalism for sure, but also just, of course, that grand statement that Cox makes throughout the movie about the utter stultifying boredom of existence. And is this LA? It is for you. Those warehouse shots, those could be Houston. They could be a lot of different cities, with train tracks going through. Yeah. And so it's definitely a big statement on how boring and generic life has become.
Well, that's part of one of the things that sticks out visually in the movie is sort of like the all the different products, specifically like food products that have. If you grew up in Southern California, it's all Ralph's. So Ralph's, which makes an appearance quite a bit in the Lebowski actually, and I think there's sort of I think there's something to be written about kind of Repo Man and Lebowski's vision of slacker LA at different points in time, but that's sort of the idea that when he's talking to his parents, and I think you really see it in that scene. He comes to his parents' house. He rides a bus to Edge City. He's going to the suburbs, and when he gets to the suburbs, he's not in LA anymore.
It's a shitty suburb, too.
Right.
It's not affluent, so it's reminding us of that.
It actually is really, really recognizable to me, particularly like the interior of the house. Everything is marked with these sort of white labels that just say things like food or beer on them, stuff like that. And he has this sort of interaction with his parents that I always find interesting. There you go, beer. Just a white can that says beer in a blank font.
Look how old it is. Look at that. Yeah. Pull tab.
And he's sitting there eating food, talking to his parents, who are, I think it's a really interesting
They're supposed to be like hippies.
And yeah, it actually was the first scene in the movie that I thought, okay, here's something that's showing a little angle on Southern California or even the politics of the 1980s, that the hippies are becoming conservatives. And what his parents are smoking weed while they're watching TV, but they're sort of hypnotized by an evangelical. It's real. I mean, talk about like hypnotized by Fox News and Facebook. It really is like the parents of the suburbs.
And I want to stand up for Cox's aesthetics, and for all the whole filmmaking crew. There's the cheesy crap movie elements of this. The ice cubes that are obviously just being shaken, ice cubes falling from the sky at the end of the movie that
right.
are, but there are so many beautifully done scenes here. And so in that one, the room is dark. It's just the blue glow of the television screen. Kind of a cliche for sure, but it's powerful. And that's only light in that room is coming from the televangelist who wants to fight godless communism abroad and secular humanism at home.
It's El Salvador, right? Like they are literally connecting directly. Like these people are connecting directly into like Reaganism and anti-communism. There
are so many scenes in this movie where you really have to pay attention to the background sounds. Strife-torn Guatemala will be on the TV in the background when he's at the repo office at one time. No, like the politics of the 80s and Reagan's America are entirely throughout this movie. Trickle down theory. It's not working out real well for everybody that we meet in the neighborhoods we go to in this movie. And that's why I was really hoping you could fill in the blanks on some of the Los Angeles stuff. Because LA, the only time I ever went to the LA area, Los Angeles areas, my dad did a conference, and when I was in second grade, we went to a conference that was in Anaheim. So all I saw was Disneyland.
So
I mean, like 75, 76 or something.
I built this movie Repo Man into a course on the history of Los Angeles. So, and it was really about depicting a certain moment in the 1980s. And if anyone's seen the documentary Los Angeles Plays Itself, that there's a section where they talk about Repo Man. And so I was coming at it from there, which is that there was an area of Los Angeles called Bunker Hill that was sort of like the city that got destroyed by essentially gentrification. I mean, it's a long story, and I won't go too into it, but it's kind of similar to what happened with like Robert Moses in New York, like wiping out this area. And that
did they not actually do the renovation there?
Well, it
was delayed.
They built skyscrapers, and in other words, they wiped out what was a sort of street level city with streets that had bars and restaurants and a sort of
local
record stores, bookstores, a real you see it in the movie The Exiles. If anyone wants to go, The Exiles is a film made by a student, Kent McKenzie at UCLA, I think, in 1961, but I think it was shot in the 50s. But you kind of see the transition, which was that like basically working people, poor people, brown people, black people, they could live in this area. And it basically, I mean, the way that Los Angeles Plays Itself puts it is that at some point, city interests realize that why are all these poor people living so close to downtown? This is like, they need to be out of here. And this is like a district that has a lot of wealth, possibilities to it. So they basically built skyscrapers there. And just to finish this thought, I mean, what you see Repo Man, Emilio Estevez, Otto, walking through a like degraded, looks like a just destroyed dystopian environment. Looks like almost construction zones everywhere. It's in that milieu.
There's always trash everywhere.
It's not quite built yet, and that's part of like the skyscrapers. If you look at whenever you see downtown in this movie, which is only a few shots, you can see that like half the skyscrapers that are there today are built. So it's sort of in transition, and the 80s are like. You can really feel the Reagan politics in this movie, and it feels like it comes out through many different characters.
I'm glad you bring that up because I have a theory about the Bonaventure Hotel.
Please.
And well, first off, so with the idea of rebellion in this movie as a theme, at every level, there's some variation on the notion of marginality. Quite literally, geographically, space-wise, on the margin of downtown LA.
Right.
And so from the very first, I mean, obviously a bad area, but hey, he's a punk rocker. They go do their thing. And I mean, there was a time when if you were into punk, the record store probably wasn't going to be in, the mall. There was no Hot Topic, to go to. Right, so you had to usually go to places, that were a little sketchy perhaps, and of course that was what was cool about it. Suburban kid coming in from Galveston to go to the sketchy.
Oh yeah, I mean it was
potentially sketchy,
destroyed places, and this is what allowed these kids to have concerts in these destroyed places in Hollywood. But like, I mean, just to give you the spoiler alert, you can't do that in Hollywood anymore. Everything's so fucking expensive. I mean, beyond COVID, everything is so expensive on Hollywood Boulevard and in these places that you've created a sort of hyper gentrified environment.
Is Viper Room still a place?
I don't think so.
Was? I mean,
that
was always such a kind of like a poser rock club.
There is an idea of like art, like what growing out of these like destroyed areas. And it's a real tricky thing to think about, because it's sort of like, well, that's great that art comes out of that, but the destroyed area is sort of what troubles me as well.
Well, I was going to say, I'm glad you brought up Bunker Hill, because I was reading a bit on your man Mike Davis.
Yeah.
What he was writing about it and what he had to say about the Bonaventure Hotel, and critiquing, of course, what Frederick Jameson says about it. And so we'll save that. But he keeps talking about Bunker Hill a lot in there. So I was really kind of in City of Courts, but also this one essay I found in the old Ann Kaplan book, Postmodernism and Its Discontents, where I have it here if I need to reference it. But so I was going to get to that. So everything is marginal. So the punk rockers are in a marginal space. Now, my understanding is that a lot of this was filmed in East LA, at least that scene where he meets Bud.
Yeah.
And I think it's significant that when Bud is going to have him steal repo the car, the people come out and they speak Spanish, and there's no translation. It's straight up Spanish. Papa, you know, la coche.
That's right.
He really emphasizes that.
He emphasizes like race a couple times, actually, right? I mean, they steal from a black family as well, or a steal. They repossess.
There's one in the office.
Yeah, well, the scene where
people
he goes
in
and
the
has
tennis gear. I mean,
I'm talking about the scene where he goes to repossess like an old black woman's car, and he's sitting with her having tea. And then like a bunch of like her family comes in. Yeah, a band.
You know who that is?
Who is that?
That's our ska connection, man. The Untouchables. I Spy for the FBI. Do you ever hear that song?
No.
Look it up. It's awesome. They were an American ska sort of mod band. So there's in the scooters, the mods, on the Vespas when they're playing around. And also I just want to give a shout out to the actress who I don't know her name, but I remember her from old episodes of Sanford and Son on television. She's wonderful. But yeah, absolutely. And that scene is race is definitely emphasized, because they put the big dude next to Otto on the couch, and how he's like fumbling with his briefcase, and but then he gets the snot beat out of him. So
can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I know your book is in part about this sort of idea of whiteness.
One chapter, it's just the one chapter.
But the idea of whiteness as it within Repo Man. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that, because it's a key line in the movie at some point. When the other punk is dying, and he says, I mean, to me, it's one of the funniest, greatest scenes in the movie.
I love
is
that
when the
scene.
punk is dying, and he's saying, I blame society for this. Society made me what I am.
Fantastic B-movie cliches of like the juvenile delinquent film.
Right. And Otto's response, and I'd love to hear your response to Otto's. Otto says, that's bullshit. You're just a white suburban punk like me.
Just like me. But it still hurts.
Yeah, right. It still hurts. I really, honestly, dude, I want to call this episode "It Still Hurts," because it feels like that's a key line, right?
That is interesting. Yeah, for sure. Whiteness. I mean, in the repo guys, we have Light, as a driver, who gets to also have one of the best lines. You're still on the job, white boy. when he's being shot at in the car.
That's right. Yep.
Get back in the car.
He's got a million great lines, that dude.
There's some really good lines in there, and some stupid ones that are meant to be like, let's go do some crimes. Let's go get sushi and not pay. I don't know if that's originally from this movie, but I remember people would say that, afterwards. So.
Let's go get some sushi and not pay.
Right. The whiteness element, I mean, for sure. I mean, I think for me, it was always that playing with otherness to try and buffer the kind of boringness of whiteness and the seeming lack of rebellion.
Right.
In the chapter, which is on a book that is focused on whiteness, I'm kind of having trouble remembering what I said in relation to that. I think in that, because I got really interested in that chapter, I really got caught up in how Cox himself, I think, is real interesting. He wants to be postmodern, but he also kind of wants to be Marxist in the sense of a real politics, because he doesn't see postmodernism as the key to a real politics.
Right.
And he wants all that stylistic fun, but he wants to say something political nonetheless, and so he's trying to balance those two. And that's what I see this whole movie. It's about trying to walk this line between those two in different elements. And if you'll go look at J. Frank Parnell, you'll notice his glasses. He has one black lens and one missing lens, and all that stuff about the two hemispheres are fundamentally at odds. So I've got all these great lines that I think kind of or details that speak to that. But of course, Otto, it's about rebellion without bullshit, and that's why the ending is the way it is. You want to be a teen rebel, which of course the '80s movies were full of. You want to be a teen rebel or any kind of rebel out there? Well, I hope there's a UFO, dead alien, glowing flying car waiting for you. There isn't, by the way.
Right.
Forget it, you know? And so it teases us with kind of promising it and then pulling it away, you know, or making it so ridiculous you can't take it seriously, of course, you know?
That is such a fascinating idea to me. I wonder if you could say, if we can figure out what it means, because you're saying, because I think it's right that the film is kind of a balance between, and maybe asking this question, can postmodern culture be Marxist at the same time? That's a really, I haven't heard it posed exactly that way.
You can be neo-Marxist, which was an attempt like Laclau and Moff, you know, it's hegemony and socialist strategy, of course, to try and merge the two. And what they end up with, though, is alliance politics, because they want us to say there's more than just class politics out there. And so maybe we can achieve something if we pull in these other elements, you know, or recognize. And I would agree with that for sure. But after this, well, I don't want to get into the whole election thing right now, which is, you know, it's still an issue. Economics versus identity politics.
100%. You know? And watching it last night, Repo Man, 1984. I'm thinking, God, it's been 36 years since this film came out, and it is, and it is connected. It is connected very closely to the sort of culture that produces what we're in.
This is an anti-Reagan movie. Yeah. Trickle-down theory is a failure in this movie.
But Reagan's never in this movie, right? You never see him.
Real quick, let me go back, because you and I, we always get all worked up and spazzy about and get all excited. Let's go back to the space, the social space. And this is why I want to talk about Los Angeles with you, because anything that I recognize as Los Angeles in this movie comes from pop culture. You know, show me the old, is it the City Hall at the old Dragnet TV show? Is that City Hall, the old building there?
This is straight out of Mike Davis, dude.
Yeah. You know, I'll tell you what, even that scene when Otto sees the Malibu and he goes chasing after it, that very classic, distinctive Los Angeles, like crossover street, you know, very beautiful. And I think they're all like have concrete cancer, as it's called now, and they're all kind of rotting away. But that's pretty distinctive to Los Angeles, but I wouldn't know that. The one thing that marks this as an LA movie for people who don't know, and, you know, like called the establishing shot. What city are we in? Okay, it's the Empire State Building. We're in New York. You know, because like there's one thing I hate more than that makes me so mad when it says New York City, present day. Dude, if you don't tell me otherwise, I will assume that. But I use that for the students. I start throwing out, okay, Golden Gate Bridge, San Francisco. You know, how would you, if you're going to do a movie, what would you use? If you were doing a movie set in Los Angeles and you want to tell me it's LA without having to say Los Angeles, 1984, what are you going to show me? And of course, every year, every semester, really, Hollywood sign, boom, done. Stop. You're finished, you know, or something like the star sidewalk or whatever it's called. There are so many distinctive things you could show me to tell me that we're in Los Angeles. We don't get any of that.
No,
not a one.
Nope.
There's one shot, and I can cue it up I have my video all set to go. There's this one weird shot. I think it's after Light and he have that after the shooting when, you know, get in the car, white boy.
Right.
And I think it cuts to this shot of the downtown LA, and it's way, way off. And there's nothing else in the foreground but like a field, you know? And the Bonaventure Hotel is in that shot, you know? And I wouldn't have known this, of course, in 1985 when I first saw the film. But LA's skyline, I think there's some buildings that I could pick out, but it's not really, it's one of the things that makes me like Houston. I could pick out the Houston skyline. We have some awesome postmodern architecture, but not one, you know, the only way you're going to tell me we're in Houston is if I show you the Astrodome. You know,
okay, well, I mean, Houston is an ignored major city in a lot of ways. I feel like, but I have friends that live in Houston.
Number 4, baby.
I know, like for being as a gigantic city, you don't. There's very little cultural knowledge nationally about Houston, but LA is a totally different example.
That Harris County, which is where Houston is larger than the state of Rhode Island. Whoa, I didn't know that. Some people have paid attention to Houston. I think Anthony Bourdain, you guys were talking about Bourdain not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I love Bourdain.
He started a series where he was going and doing like food cultures, and he came to Houston because Houston is a very, very multicultural, pluralistic city. Didn't say economically equal, but culture, ethnicity, race, a lot of different cultures are here for sure. So very postmodern in that way as well, the pluralism. But anyway, getting back to Los Angeles, there are no markers here. The only two that really give it away. One of those computer screens that the government has says something like 67% chance that he's going to Los Angeles. Because remember the opening, he goes down Route 66. Then another fantasy, that other myth of the West, Grapes of Wrath for sure. Mm-hmm. Paradise, utopia is waiting. We do not see utopia. We see a totally marginal subterranean part of Los Angeles. And it's dirty, filthy, poor, possibly scary.
It feels like the end of the world. And it fits into
not a place you want to be.
It fits into other visions of sort of urban decay in the 80s, right? Like Escape from New York. I mean, there were a million others that sort of showed that sort of city. But for me, I find it very identifiable, especially the scenes where Otto is walking in the streets and there's trash everywhere. I lived in the Valley for a few years when I was younger, and always, I walked around the Valley a lot, and it's sort of like the sun. The sort of like relentless. Is it
truly like I hear these things? Is it really hot and very different from Los Angeles proper?
The Valley's hotter, yeah. But I should say, and this is part of what's unique about Repo Man. You're right that they don't give you any iconography of like sunny LA. You don't see the girls in bikinis on.
There's no sign. Welcome to Malibu.
Yeah,
there's no
Venice
surfing.
Beach. There's really no even sense that Hollywood is there. In fact, like it's just you get this idea that there's sort of like just everyone's sort of like left alone, like these outcasts that's sort of looking at each other in groups. There's the
deregulated, you might say.
Right.
Thank you, Ronnie.
And the idea that there's this sort of square community that pays their bills and everything, and the Repo Men aren't part of that. He even says like, oh, you got to act like you're part of this square community. One of my favorite lines.
Yeah, act like you're a cop. Dress like a cop.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines from Harry Dean Stanton, I mean, there's a million, is when they're just watching like some people play basketball, and he says, ordinary fucking people, I hate them.
Those are great lines. Well, they're snorting coke off his little official clipboard. Remember?
Yep.
That's why they're in Repo Man. I don't know, a Repo Man doesn't do speed. Speed, huh? And then cut to,
and then let's go get some drinks.
Those are the great lines. The Repo Man spent his life getting into tense situations. Oh, those great lines, right?
What do you think of that philosophical strain of it that comes largely through the character Miller, that is a kind of a key figure in the end, because he's the one that drives him away at the end, right? The dude that's sort of like.
I've got the theory on that one.
Yeah, because that, I mean, well, in my head, he's sort of like the hippie burnout. He's bringing some of the like mystical knowledge of the 60s into
I'm so glad you brought that up.
But yeah,
because
go ahead.
I wanted to make a note of, thank God for Note app in my iPhone, because you had Rick Perlstein on not too long ago.
That's right.
And because he started doing the rounds for his new book, the one on Reagan getting elected, and I did the audiobook tetralogy of his coverage of concern. Learned a lot. Don't recommend it. Like just hours and hours of all those details. And when he does in the one on Nixon land, no, the one in between.
Yeah.
The third one.
The Invisible Bridge.
In the 70s when Jimmy Carter gets elected.
Right.
And he talks about in the 70s, everyone was sort of into this is when they were into UFOs and weird stuff, the Bermuda Triangle and all that. And I started thinking, Repo Man dips the toe into that,
Definitely.
With UFO, United Fruitcake Outlet, the aliens, Dianetics parody of diuretics, remember the little book?
I think that's honestly the first joke about Scientology on film. That's 1984, which is another thing is like kind of like, I think of Repo Man as a sort of ahead of its time movie in terms of how it was sort of identifying things that were worthy of parody that weren't being parodied yet.
Was Scientology, since I know very still kind of an LA associated with Los Angeles at that time, because they had their famous building.
Definitely, yeah.
Down there. Mm-hmm. So maybe that because he's immersed in that, because he had I think studied law or was going to be pre-law at Oxford, and then he went to film school at UCLA, I believe. And obviously has a rebel streak in himself. Alex
Even the
Cox.
cops are reading diuretics at the end of the film. It's so good.
The government guys. And I was just thinking, actually, as we were talking about it, it kind of struck me when we were talking about the way the government guys are portrayed. He does the reversal. If the punks come off at least a lot more authentic than they usually did in TV shows, the government guys are the cartoon. They're all blonde and they have really bad wigs.
Yeah.
Wearing the suit, and everything there is they're the cartoon, And the best is the failure of government, with that shot when he's there. I think the Malibu goes across a bridge in LA, and their government van is pulled over with two guys in their white suits trying to work on the engine, trying to repair it. And it's just this missing shot, It goes by quickly, but I always thought that was just hilarious. But the students don't laugh as much as I wish they did.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because I had a very specific. I've had very specific reactions from students about this film. I have yet to have a student go crazy for Repo Man and really love it, which is disappointing.
I always have one or two. There's not four who are going to do their final essay on it this semester.
I feel like part of why I locked into the movie and was able to quote unquote get what it was doing, or at least it resonated with me, is in part like knowing a little bit about 80s culture and punk and stuff like that. But what's your experience with the students? Because you mentioned that you've had some really great papers from students on Repo.
Well, I don't always get great papers because mostly they just kind of partly regurgitate a lot of what I'm saying about rebellion. But sure. I don't mind if they can find some other little twist they can bring in. But I've had, I used to even ask them who liked it, who didn't, as a way to enter into it.
Who cares?
Because then my next statement is, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care if you like it. So now I just begin straight out. Look, I don't care if you like this movie. What I want you to see is that anything you don't like, you can still find a way to figure it out and think about it.
Sure.
Nonetheless, I about 2 semesters ago, I had a female student who just went bonkers for this movie. Just loved it. And that's nice, that far along in time that it could register with people. So it's, well, I don't know if I'm gonna have like 3 or 4 essays on it. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking, is Repo Man an inside joke in some ways, or is it becoming? Okay, is it a film that will stand the test of time? Because I feel like there's a lot of knowledge you got to kind of add to cultural knowledge that sort of
maybe that's what we can do a project together. We'll do the annotated Repo Man.
Rap genius.
You can bring in LA. I'll bring in 80s, being the older fellow, the older scholar, who remembers generic beer
Somehow
can.
You look younger than me, Daniel. I don't understand how that happens.
I'm aging well, I guess. Maybe it's Zoom. I don't know.
It's Texas.
Well, yes, because you're in LA, man. It's a harder life. It's brutal on a man. You're living
true.
The Bukowski. Anyway. So the social space. So everything in LA is totally hidden. I was going to say. So the one thing that a lot of students will pick up on, and people who don't already know it's Los Angeles because they've been there or something. LA River.
Yeah, there you go.
Boom.
Sure.
The LA River. Greece, 1978, and by the time the students now get to it, Terminator 2, there's the one where they crash land a space shuttle into, I can't even remember the name of that movie, but Hilary Swank is in it. The LA River is the most obvious signifier of Los Angeles for them. But they may not even really know that.
It's kind of a perfect signifier of Los Angeles.
But I wouldn't know that without having seen it so many times. Drag racing in Greece in there.
Yep.
And it appears so many times. So it's through pop culture that I recognize Los Angeles for sure. And I wanted to ask you, because every time you talk about LA, I always want to just email you immediately. Go, please, for those of us who don't understand. Now, where you grew up, did you grow up in the Valley?
No, I'm not.
The burbs?
I'm no LA. I'm no Angelino. In fact, that's been my experience. Is that I grew up outside of LA in a town called Ventura, which is the town I'm in now, which is about 40 miles up the coast from LA. Yeah, yep.
Okay. Because I want to say, every time I look at a Rand McNally of LA or that area, I recognize so many names. Pasadena, Fortuna. It might be a collection of the weird things I've had contact with.
Right.
But kind of like Ohio, weirdly. If you go look at the map of Ohio, you will be shocked at how many of those cities' names you know.
Definitely, yeah.
From the industrial.
Dude, I just had the episode earlier this week with Durf, the comic artist on Kent State,
I downloaded it. I haven't listened to it yet.
Yeah, and what I told him is like, I feel like I know Ohio, weirdly enough. I've spent like, probably 2 days total in Ohio passing through, but Ohio is like California. I feel like Ohio is somehow been projected in culture and politics in ways that maybe other states haven't.
Well, here's what I want to ask you though, David. So being 40, okay, so here's Galveston. We're 50 miles away from Houston, maybe 45 from point to point. Depending on traffic, what time of day you go, if traffic's moving, it's less than an hour. How long does it take you to get 40 miles into Los Angeles? It doesn't just feel like a whole nother universe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare. That's what I say.
There is a line of consciousness and
2 hours. That's part of what I think Repo Man captures really well without being so on the nose about it, is how like it's a movie about cars. It's a movie about sort of like,
you want to say the line?
You go for it.
The more you drive, the less intelligent you are. That is such a perfect line for LA. But of course, these days it could fit most any larger, large city. Houston, you spend a lot of time in your car because there's so many bedroom communities. But the idea of driving, I think you guys brought this up with the one on the Noir remake.
LA Confidential.
LA Confidential. Y'all laughing, how people in the theater laughed about, it only take 10 minutes to get to the beach now when they do the new highway.
Hey, can I bring this up, though? Because that makes me think that in this book, Alice Bagg's book, and then the book about that John Doe wrote Under the Big Black Sun, which is about LA punk, right? They all talk about this scene.
There's 2 parts to that. I was almost going to order it once.
This scene is a scene that I knew nothing about. I wasn't in LA and I was way too young. I was a child, but there were definitely like kids in our town that had this sort of like big spiky hair and all that sort of stuff. And there was a coffee house downtown called the Daily Grind, which is now a Starbucks.
But this is in your hometown.
Yeah, but
I think we've talked about the special book record store,
right? Wild Planet, Salzers, and we have that scene here. But what I was going to say about LA and what sort of like came up in the books, it's something I didn't realize, which is that the traffic got a lot worse over time, and that in the 1980s, when these kids were sort of like inhabiting this broken LA, there was a sense that you could get around it easier, or at least that there wasn't the traffic that there is today. So they all mention that in all these like old punks in their memoirs. They say LA was a different place, in terms of being on the street, in terms of walking, in terms of getting places and around. Yeah. It felt like it was
maybe
kind of
like you didn't need a car as much, even unless you were a band gigging.
I don't know if you've seen like the Dogtown and Z-Boys stuff of like.
Oh God, yeah. I show that in the pop culture class.
Isn't that the same story as Repo Man, basically? I mean, isn't that like, a broken LA, none of it works anymore. It's basically been abandoned.
It's so beautifully. I'm reading the bits they show of the stuff they published like in Thrasher magazine, like such beautiful writing about the carcass of the 20th century will be the new generation's playground.
Right.
And I did not do justice to it, but it's like really just beautiful, smart, and
I know exactly what you're talking about. I love those lines.
I think the guy was photographing those kids, which is so funny. It's like when these moments happen, thank God there's somebody there with a damn camera, in a movie camera to film them fooling around in a ditch. A school ditch.
Dude, how about
turn that into their playground?
How about skateboarding?
That's some Repo Man shit right there.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Skateboarding in the pools that have been drained in suburban backyards because there was a drought. I mean, the craziest shit to me of the Dogtown Z-Boy story is them at Pacific Ocean Park, which my dad talks about as a place that was like... Yeah, Pacific Ocean Park was this like pier that had roller coasters. All that shit literally collapsed into the fucking ocean, and it's really scary looking. There's like roller coasters and broken pylons and
arson fire.
And these dudes are surfing through it, like literally surfing in the rubble. Yeah. And surfing through the rubble of
be it on the land, be it in water. It's beautiful and terrifying all at the same time.
Repo Man really captures the poetry of that moment, I think. Yeah. That sort of like these abandoned kids.
The guts to survive in that environment But the funny part about Dogtown, I don't care. It's us. We're going to do what we do. The thing about Dogtown, they're so protective of their crappy neighborhood, the localism,
Totally.
and their dangerous, destroyed surf park, let's call it.
This is our abandoned neighborhood. They turned it into
their own surf park with this is how we do it. And, it's dangerous, and you have to learn how to navigate this. These aren't just beautiful Malibu waves where everybody can have a peaceful time and commune with nature. It's like, it's rough, it's mean. And all those footage of like the broken surfboards, and these are probably guys that cost a lot to go get another surfboard. But they take that horror and turn it into something that they identify with, it identifies them. That's their identity politics, man.
Yeah,
We're working class kids. This is our playground. And we're going to be gods in it, Shit, I think I just said something.
Yeah, right. It's weird when I think about Repo Man.
And we don't want you here.
Right.
There's gentrifying it.
There's hostility. And it feels like there's hostility throughout Repo Man. It actually, if I was trying to like make a historical comment about Reagan era, it seems like it's the beginnings or the real. You're really soaking in the rugged individualism of everybody basically, taking care of themselves in a very savage kind of way.
Yeah. Let's jump on that, because that's certainly a lot of like the stuff that the Repo Men will talk about. But specifically, when it's always the stuff about credit as a sacred trust and all this garbage. But here's the thing, and this is why Alex Cox is so smart, and it's so funny. Now, even when I'm 17, I'm pretty sure I got the joke here. When he goes, they don't pay bills in Russia. Free my ass, what are you, a fucking commie? No, I ain't no commie. And he's like, good, I don't want any commies in my car. And then the perfect beat of a second. No Christians either. So there's that give and take, that play, the back and forth, the irony. You can't just write off Bud as a conservative type of guy. He's just kind of a weirdo, right?
He's actually kind of admirable in some ways. I love that line. That line where he says, you're not a fucking commie, are you? No commies in the car. No Christians either. To me, it tips off that, it would be, there's nothing easy in this film. There's, you don't look at this film and say, oh, there's this character. So there's that. Even the punks that are his friends that are sort of like the comic, there's a lot of comic relief.
No, they're buffoons.
Yeah, those buffoons, there's so many great lines there, and they're really dynamic characters in some way. Like the conversation that I think Duke has with the girl where he says, we should get married, and I want you to have my baby, and
Why?
Everybody's doing it.
We'll do it. Why?
Well, everybody's doing it, yeah.
Let me do the popper under your nose, like, asshole. Yeah. Popper, let's go do the job. He gets into character.
Right.
And that scene, oh, by the way, so that's the second spot where you might be able to tell something about Los Angeles, only because on the front of their bumper, it has this I hate LA sticker.
I love that, yep.
The I heart with the like Ghostbusters cross out in
Yep,
it.
I noticed that.
But you really have to be paying attention for that. One of the things that I think is, if we shift a little bit, okay, so we've got marginal all over the place. This movie wants to be marginal, but it wants to be Hollywood too.
Yeah.
It wants to be cool, different, anti-Hollywood, but it also, I want to be seen. I want Universal to release me, distribute me without having to do like, John Waters back in the 70s and basically drive around with the film in his car and drive around to theaters, or be so underground that no one ever knows about you until 40 years later, somebody will do a documentary about you. The cinema of transgression that was happening in New York at the same time, kind of coming out of the no wave music of the late 70s, early 80s. Just, if you want to see real dangerous, subversive, but it's all sex and violence, which to me is just lame. Lydia Lunch doing something naughty. Ooh. Back then maybe, but like these days, sex and violence shit, that's what Madonna still banks on. Who cares?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, apparently they do. Contextual rebellion. The parents would care, And so what I was thinking, what makes this film marginal in this whole thing and very, very, very postmodern is its blending of those fragments of genre, And don't forget, guys, the adjective form of genre is generic. And the thing is, everybody likes to make like the lore of this film is that they try to get product placement money. Remember, E.T. was the famous one in '82. They got that Reese's Pieces money to help fund the movie. And they apparently, the story goes, they tried to get some, but nobody wanted to be connected to this weird movie. So therefore, the generic products. There's so many generic. The art team had to seriously do a lot of work for that to just be this little joke about not getting product placement money. Just aisles and aisles of those white boxes with blue stripes. And let's not forget back in 1985 when Public Image Limited,
dude,
those are the colors.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That
white
he co-opted the Repo Man generic art scheme, light blue. And I have a t-shirt too that says concert t-shirt. It was a good show. I'm an old man. I'm a middle. I'm 52, so I'm and I had my first colonoscopy, so I'm technically officially middle-aged.
Beautiful, man.
Oh, it was awesome.
I'm 42, so I have so much to look forward to.
10 more years. Well, actually 8. I was 2 years late. Never mind.
Well, I mean, speaking of generations, I mean, this movie Repo Man is sort of legendary for the generation that was just right before me, and the older brothers, not my older brothers, but certain older brothers were cool and into Repo Man. It kind of tipped me off that there was some like kind of charge to this movie.
Hardcore is on its death door. You know, I mean, it's almost 84. I give it up to 86. By 86, forget it. It's just, it's over for the most part. Whoever's still doing it is a hardcore, but in 84, it's definitely kind of, at least in LA, it would have been a very old genre by now.
Well, I mean, how big were these songs really? Because I played that Suicidal Tendencies song, just one Pepsi and you couldn't get it for me. That's the greatest song.
Good.
And I'm one
watch that video on YouTube and you'll see some of the little skater kids. The skater culture.
I've seen that, but how big was that song? I mean, were those weren't like Billboard charting songs?
I'm pretty sure I probably heard it for the first time from that soundtrack. Yeah, probably.
Right.
But it was an MTV video, so I don't know. Maybe MTV but I mean, it would have been less limited rotation, so to speak.
Right.
But that was a pretty big song. By the way, guys, anyone out there who doesn't know Suicidal Tendencies, get their first album. Oh my God, it is so good. Get it. The crossover heavy metal thing I never could got into, but the first album, oh my God, it's so good. Okay, there. Stamp of approval from middle professor. The music is, I don't know. I know people who had that tape and were total white, blonde girl, waspy kids who loved it, so who knows? Maybe that's the way they came across it. It was in a soundtrack. That's nice. Rather than knowing all those bands and knowing where to go to get it. We didn't have Amazon. You didn't have the internet to just order everything. You had to go find it. Yeah. And so to put it on sometimes commercial consumerism is helpful for the breed, you might say, to help for the evolution of the breed.
Well, I just wonder if there is a discourse, and certainly among punks. I mean, in a lot of ways, punk was like, we're not a part of the quote unquote mainstream. Right. Whereas Repo Man's a very mainstream movie. I wonder how punk,
it's not though. It's not, but it just wants to dip its toe in it. Yeah. And obviously it's limited run. It's a cool, weird movie. It's kind of like when Napoleon Dynamite came out and everybody thought they were cool because it was such a weird movie.
That's right.
And I'm sorry to keep saying I'm like middle-aged man going, push Shaw. And I like that movie, but still, I was like, no, kids. So it has that weird element about it that makes it cool and different from the typical 80s teen or 80s movie. It definitely has it, and it's very, very self-conscious. It's totally, all of that stuff is in there on purpose. And I was going to say, so here's the thing. One of the things I really focused on in the chapter, and I really focus on when I teach the movie, a lecture on it, is not only do we see all the generic products and they're bland, beer is beer. Yeah. As my mainstream, I'm a sellout, love my Diet Coke. Or maybe I like the aspartame more. But Diet Cola? No. I don't want your generic. But anyway, the whole focus on generic is so beautifully done when we get, the first shot is, oh, by the way, I was going to say about the special effects. So if anyone watches this for the first time, they're going to laugh at how corny and old the special effects seem. But the part where the people get zapped, that's actually pretty up to date. If you've ever heard of The Day After.
Sure, yeah.
Did you ever get to see the clip when people get nuked? I have it queued up if you want me to do a share screen. But it's exactly like that. The way they appear in Repo Man is exactly the way they looked in The Day After. So that's actually not such bad special effects for the time. You know,
no, it looks like Terminator. It's sort of like people flash into bones. But
so that second scene is the grocery store where Auto works, and we see all those. We have our lowering crane shop. We see all those big name brands and swinging signs. And by the way, you brought up the grocery store. I still love that shop because it reminds me of the one where I worked. I was a sacker when I was 16.
Yeah,
with Gerlins and like Piggly Wiggly. You know, it has that old school look about it. You know, now that everybody wants to look like maybe a couple of levels rungs down Whole Foods, you know.
The lighting, honestly, it's the lighting that gets you.
That's the noir element, that very realistic lighting. And so generic, there's Kevin singing the 7-Up jingle. People as products, right?
Yeah.
They're wearing their blue generic smocks. And the funny thing is it
could be honestly a satire of communism.
You know what though? That's interesting. Yeah, that could be a twist.
Right?
Yeah. Or England, because, you know, kind of semi-socialist England, you know, or social labor, you know,
right,
party.
Right.
Maybe.
I mean, Repo Man, honestly, one of the big things that comes out of it for me is just like the world sucks.
Like, well, here's the thing. And this is the thing. Even that generic product, it could be taken as satire against the blandness of the contemporary world. But it also is a big slap in the face to the idea of brand name. You know, brand name Hollywood, brand name director, brand name actor. Good God, nowadays, brought to you by the producer of Michael Bay. Oh, it's going to be a good movie then, or the kind of junk I like, you know. Brought to you by the people who did this, you know.
Right.
And so those are the name brands. That's the Coca-Cola. And so if you go back to that scene, generic, and I write about this in the chapter, for just a second, a nanosecond, behind them, you'll see this red box just red with a white stripe, not enough to know. In the nanosecond when Kevin is thrown out, you see the front glass and it's the Coca-Cola script, just for a flash. Mm-hmm. Then cut to slam dancing punks in an alley with what? Graffiti, anarchy, the Black Flag bars, the Circle Jerks crazy like Toys R Us reverse letter logo. You know, these are products with their own logos. Now, look, we can theorize they're not working at that same level as, say, Michael Jackson at the time, the early 80s, you know, or whatever you want to bring up now. Beyonce, of course. You know, they're not working at that level, but it's also this statement of you have to walk that line. Look, these guys want to make music. They want to sell their stuff. They want people to hear it. Now, you can sell it for a lower amount or something, which was always cool about punk albums back then. You know, $7 or something, you know, holy cow. They were always really inexpensive. But obviously, look, product. It's not as simple. It's not just straight, clean rebellion. You can't get away with that. Okay. And then who walks up? Duke, wearing his Sid Vicious shirt. Where Sid's doing this goofy, and I had that t-shirt. I did have that t-shirt. But there he is, the poster boy of punk, the branding, you know, the consumable good.
I feel like that's linked up right at the beginning too with after the grocery store scene, and he leaves and loses his job, and then he goes to a party, and then he's sort of alone, and it's one of my favorite parts that really drew me in the first time I watched the movie is when he's singing to himself, and he stands up.
Black Flag TV party.
Yeah, and he's singing the Black Flag song. He stands up and he starts chanting, Saturday Night Live, Monday Night Football, the Jeffersons. There's your brands, right? Like here's the brands and the sort of culture that defines us.
The problem is that of course that's what the song is making fun of as well, but it's sort of hard if you don't know that previously. It might just sound like it's coming out of him that way. But everything
it works either way, honestly.
But don't forget as well, what are the names of all the Repo Men? Bud, Miller, Light, Oli, which might be a missing beer now, Olympia, like that, which was like garbage kind of Bush beer at the time, They're all named after products.
Yeah.
Right? Otto's name.
Right.
Palindrome. No matter, spell it forward, spell it backwards. It's going to be the same old thing every single day, And I hate his last name is Maddox, Maddox. You see that on one of the CIA screens. And I still wish to this day he had just called it Maddo. Because it would be such a product name.
Right.
Buy a box of Maddo for your teen rebellion, All the cool kids are into Maddo over and over again. So his whole, even with him, we get that throughout the whole movie, just product. But it's always mixed. And so does Repo Man think it stands above this transcendent? No, it names itself. You bear with. Okay. It's when the Malibu comes out of the car wash.
Yeah.
In the background is a burger joint. And it's an indie. Don't forget the great line that Bud has when I'm going to get that money. I'm going to open my own yard. I'm going to go indie.
I'm going indie.
No way you can do that on 40,000. Like you can if you have good credit. My credit is spotless. Which is also a beautiful shot. The whole foreground background thing.
When you put those lines,
deep focus,
the idea of like doing what you have to do to navigate this corrupt system, and having pride in your ability to navigate it. There's sort of a realism to these guys. The idea of like sort of. We're not waiting for any politics to save us, and we're surviving in this manner. There's something really, I don't know, inviting about the way the Repo Men survive.
Okay, I'm going to do a share screen.
Despite the fact that they're a bunch of assholes.
Am I enabled to do share screen? Have you enabled me to have that? Have you limited me?
I think you might be limited.
Let me try.
Go ahead.
Okay, you have to go in there.
I did it.
Okay, cool. I'm going to show everybody. This is what we've been talking about the city. Hold on, get up there full. There, look how far away the city is.
That's the shot.
And that's Los Angeles? Really? That could be Tulsa,
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that actually, it's an interesting thing.
Oh, God, there you go. There's trickle-down theory, man.
Yeah, I mean, all of these shots of the street, of street level LA, to me are, you're looking at that shot you're showing right there.
And there's a dead guy on the pavement.
Yeah, there's dead bodies everywhere.
Look at the guy crying in misery down there.
But this is
Reagan's America, man.
It could be other cities, though. It's not just
political.
LA.
So that's political criticism. That's not cutesy word language games postmodernism, But the thing is, he wants his cake and he wants to eat it too. Yeah. I want to do this. I want to be real. But I also want to mix all these genres together and be pluralistic in that way, which is postmodern. I don't want to be a middle finger to mainstream commerciality and all that. But I also still want to sell and kind of be seen. I don't want to be a piece of junk movie, What was the thing? I forgot the scene I was going to show you what we were talking about. There's J. Frank Parnell with his split lenses.
Those split lenses. I don't know if you're a Twin Peaks fan, but they remind me of.
I've seen the first series.
Yeah, Dr. Jacoby in the first series has these split glasses as well. I wonder what that's about. There's something going on in the 80s.
Oh God! This I'm not going to play it. Well, there's the I Hate LA, but this let me get. I'll do the stop share at this moment. That scene, just in case anybody for watching it for the first time, that scene, the big shootout, is the consolidation of the whole postmodern element of this, which is borrowing from all these different genres, taking fragments. And remember, genre is not quality Oscar material. Genre is the stuff we do to make money, And so you have that noir, seedy convenience store. You have what is basically like a Western shootout with like who's going to fire first, the end of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Hell, Reservoir Dogs borrows from that, of course.
100%. Yeah, definitely. In fact, Reservoir Dogs street level LA corresponds to Repo Man a lot, I think.
Well, let me find, where did I put that stupid movie? Oh, there you are. I don't know if I'm blocked. Let me try something here because you have that. So the Western. Okay, when Bud, I'm going to come back to you now. Hold on. Sorry about that, bro. Let's do a quick share screen.
We are in Dr. Traber's class right now.
You are in my class. This isn't, where'd you go? Oh, QuickTime Player. Okay, can you see him then?
Yeah, I can see it.
There's Fear playing on like the radio.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to be able to actually hear this though.
Oh, we aren't?
No, that's okay.
Well, here, just watch. Let's do it real quick. Everybody can see all the generics. Boom. ketchup, fake blood.
Right.
It's just commenting on itself, throughout there.
Yeah. For those that can't see this, what Dr. Traber is showing us right now is there's a shootout in the film in which, ketchup is sort of the squib shot. In other words, a shot goes off and it hits the bullet. Apparently hits all these bottles of ketchup. So in other words, like we're playing with the fakeness and the product and the blood and the movie. This is. To me, that's that multi-layered thing that I associate with postmodernity is a sort of like, where are we in the dream, right? Like we're sort of like, we're sort of caught in all of those layers of reality. That's really great stuff, dude.
Hold on. I very quickly remembered what I was going to show you. It was about the car wash scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? We don't have time. I won't waste your time with that.
Just describe it because they're not going to see it anyway.
He comes out and in the background, oh, by the way, the guy washing the car is Alex Cox, the guy who does the towel.
Yep.
But in the background, you see this total indie. It's not a name brand. It's not McDonald's. It's not Wendy's. It's not Burger King. It's R plus M Burgers. Repo Man, right? So look, I too am a product. I have to serpentine my way through this stuff, right? No, so it's Marxism and postmodernism. It's about existing within this liminal state. And liminality is survival, really. Are you going to be either or? Are you going to be both and? Both and is postmodernism in my book.
Dude, you drop so many gems and then we just move on from them. So I'm just going to pause on that one right there, that liminality is survival. Because I think that part of it really resonates with me. The sort of like how you navigate a reality, particularly that, this postmodern reality to me has been accelerated by social media and all the technology we're on right now. You and I are staring at each other on a goddamn, screen that was in science fiction movies of the 1980s.
And it's awesome. Right? It's still cool that we have this so that we can do this.
There's the liminality, right?
Yeah.
Like there's the liminality.
But always be critical. Be thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to use it because it's here,
Dude, you've helped me unpack Repo Man. We have so much more that we could say, but I wanna wrap it up because we're gonna move on and maybe come back to it. But dude, maybe a couple final thoughts on this film, because this film, like for those that don't know, this movie is really special. And if you haven't seen it, and go watch it, and hopefully you can sort of after sort of unpacking a little bit of what we've said here. And you can hopefully see what we're seeing in it, because it's something that...
that's why I really hope you don't put it behind the paywall. We need to take the word to the people, David.
Yeah, for sure.
People need to discover this movie. Well, real quick, one thing, I'm going to give credit to John Presnell, who mentioned this to me, and I didn't ever think about this, but like all that auto parts, and then of course auto parts appears on the building and the background and one of those, but the whole idea of autonomy.
Yeah.
The play on that is the prefix.
Ooh, that's autonomy. Good.
Booyah. I didn't think of that one, and I'd already published the book. I was like, God damn it, where were you? But I had a new relevancy today. I had a new revelation talking to one of the students about their presentation yesterday. And I wish I'd thought of this as well. Here you go, all these years later. I'm still thinking of new stuff. At the very, very end, okay, so why is it Miller can fly out in the car, the guy who doesn't drive? Because he doesn't want anything from it. He's just going to let it exist. The church, the government, the Repo Man, they all want to own it, control it, hide it, suppress it, whatever. Miller's just going to let it do its thing. And at the end, it's a beautiful shot. That green light on Otto's face with like this kind of blank bewilderment.
I love it.
And as he's moving, he's like drawn, like tractor beam, right? What about our relationship? Huh? What about our relationship? Fuck that. And it's like no more. And what I said, and I always loved that line. It was like had almost a Hemingway quality of it. Isn't it pretty to think so? He gets in the car, they take off. The life of the Repo Man is always intense. Ha ha. What I just realized, there's a great irony there, a great paradox. It's so traditional. What looks kind of revolutionary or maybe subversive is actually totally traditional. You got to get away from society, man. It's the most common American lit trope there is. To be an individual, you have to cut yourself off from society. And that's going to include women, and it's going to include everything, the government, everything. I just now thought of that, man.
That's great, dude. Yeah.
And where's he going to go? the outer realm. I don't know, into space.
Right. It's almost like Manifest Destiny continues, right? It crashed into the Pacific, it ended in LA, but now we have to go to space. That is the story of American imperialism.
Booyah! We did it. High five.
Fuck. Yes. Thanks,
academics working together.
I knew we would find a few gems in Repo Man, dude. This was really fun.
Last note.
Yeah.
The first conference paper I ever did was in 1996. Did it at Towson State University in near or outside Baltimore. And I have a buddy who lived in Baltimore. And on the next day, we're walking around. We go into this like cute little weirdo shop, and they have this magnet of the poster.
It's so fucking cool.
It was just faded, you know,
dude,
just faded. Crazy.
Well, you know, a lattice of coincidence, right?
Play-Doh shrimp, dude. Play-Doh shrimp.
Thanks, Daniel. This was really fun.
Thank you. It's good to get this out of our system.
For sure. Okay, that's going to do it for today. I want to give a huge thank you to Daniel Traber for coming on and ranting about Repo Man. It's a conversation that I'll be thinking about for a long time. Repo Man is a film that I will be watching for the rest of my life. And if you haven't joined the Repo Man cult yet, I think that when you watch this film, you will become a part of that cult, because I think that people that listen to Nostalgia Trap will really key into what Alex Cox and really the whole cast is doing in this amazing movie. And I realized after we recorded this that I made a mistake. A factual error is in this conversation. I mentioned for some reason Amy Dolenz as a star of this movie. She's not in this movie, and I now understand why. I was having a conversation the night before we recorded about the Tony Danza 1989 terrible film called She's Out of Control. If anybody remembers that movie, Amy Dolenz, who is Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, it's his daughter, and she's an actress and been around for a long time now. But she was a star of that movie, and for whatever reason, when I heard Daniel say the Monkees, it triggered that. So I was wrong about that. But I think everything else we said in this, I would stand by. And I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Like I said, Patreon is the only way that we have to connect to our audience. So if you are able to subscribe, it really is the whole thing we're doing here. So go over to patreon.com/nostalgiatrap. We've got lots of great bonus episodes. And in fact, we're doing a live episode with Justin Rogers Cooper and Bill Black on the JFK assassination, conspiracy theories, pop culture, all that stuff. Very much looking forward to that. That's on Tuesday, November 24th. So if you want to be part of that, go over to our Patreon and join up. Really enjoying the conversations we're having with our subscribers there. And we'll talk to everyone very soon. Okay, see ya.